Joining me now, Paul Tweed, an international media lawyer, joins me now. Paul, thanks so much for joining us. What do you make of this decision? Largely as expected or a surprise?
Well, certainly in the latter part of the hearing, it was looking very bleak indeed for Rebecca Vardy. So I certainly wasn't surprised whenever I heard the judgment today. I think the problem is once you decide to issue defamation proceedings and jump onto the libel bandwagon, it can be very difficult to get off it, not least due to the fact that legal costs start to mount very, very quickly indeed, particularly in London. And so this looks to me like a case that, when you stand back and look at it with hindsight, you really have to question how, anyone would want to risk what appears to be between £2.5 and £3 million, which is likely to be the total cost bill facing Rebecca Vardy here at the end of the day. So it's really, in days gone by, we used to be concerned or talk about the level of damages awarded. But since the juries have been abandoned, we are now, the legal costs are by far the biggest factor that people have to take into account before they embark in this type of case.
I want to come to this estimated cost figure in a moment because it seems absurdly large to me. But before we do that, just remind everyone, so who had to prove the burden of proof in this case?
Well, the action was brought by Rebecca Vardy. She sued Colleen Rooney for defamation on the basis of a tweet that Colleen Rooney had posted. Now, Colleen Rooney, she stuck by what she'd said and pleaded truth, the defence of truth. And in other words, she went into court to justify what she'd said and was also claiming that it was in the public interest, although that did not come into play in the judgment once it was found, once the judge decided that there was a strong element of truth in the subject tweet. So basically, Rebecca Vardy failed to prove her case, and Colleen Rooney mounted a successful defence, and she, as a result, is able to recover at least 70% of her costs, and Rebecca Vardy is going to be stuck, obviously, with 100% of her legal costs.
So I mean, how is it possible? Is 2.5 to 3 million a reasonable estimate in your eyes? I've heard that number thrown around today. I mean, it wasn't that complex a trial, was it? It wasn't that long-lasting.
The problem in London, as I say, in particular, because the law was changed in 2013, there are more interlocutory hearings and applications and case management conferences, all to determine whether there's maybe serious harm or whether certain meanings can be put before the court. And all this takes time. And if you take up a lawyer's time, it costs money.
Still, I'm staggered. I can't believe it costs that much. But I'd take your word for it. You know a lot more than I do on this. Does Rebecca Vardy have grounds for an appeal? Are there other people that perhaps could be blamed in some form of way, or that she'll feel hard done by? Her agents thrown out a lot in various discussion points?
Well, that's obviously a matter for her own lawyers to advise her on. I don't see the grounds for an appeal, but again, I was not involved in the case. You have to always be very careful in passing judgment. Even in a case of this nature where a judgment has been given, you've got to know the facts. And the trial judge, to be fair, heard everything and has given a very, very categoric and detailed judgment, having heard all the facts. And certainly that, I think it's going to be a very, very difficult case if an appeal was mounted. But I understand from the comments made post the announcement of the judgment today that an appeal is unlikely.
And finally, do you think that this sets precedents going forward, or will maybe just in a more minor way warn people off similar attempted libel lawsuits?
No, this has been happening from time immemorial. You win some, you lose some. Even in the past couple of years, I mean, we've seen different results on both sides of the Atlantic. Some of the cases are before a judge sitting alone. Some of the cases are before a jury. And each time it has become more and more unpredictable as to the outcome. But that has always been the case. It's very difficult until the court hears all the facts, is able to assess the credibility of the witnesses, which is sometimes a very difficult thing for even a party's own lawyers to assess. Until all that is done, the outcome is very much up in the air, and very much up in the expensive air, I should say.
Well, Paul, I'm very grateful for you joining us, not least for free, given that we know how expensive lawyers like yourself's time is these days. So thank you again, Paul, for joining us.
No problem.